Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 2 of The Great Jahy Will Not Be Defeated. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So, just to recap things, Jahy was once the second in command of the Dark Realm, or whatever it's called, second only to the Great Demon Lord, and, she used to live an exalted life, lording over the palace, lording over her minions, having them feed her and bring her wine and all that. But, life changed when the Dark Realm was just absolutely destroyed. So now she's stuck in Earth. And, boy howdy, her existence has become considerably more dire, Like, nominally she should be trying to restore the Dark Realm, but, between her job and her apartment and her unfortunate stature, it's not that easy. So, she is at least determined to try and find other bits of the giant mana crystal that maintain the Dark Realm, but, I feel like there's only so much you can do wandering around a city when you're the size and stature of Jahy. I mean, sure, her little mana crystal amulet might help her, but, can she really do it as she is? So I should also mention that, despite being sort of unsympathetic, I do kind of sympathize with Jahy a little bit, because, when you wake up and your mattress is soaked in sweat, it's over. I really do hate hot weather. I prefer cold weather for sure, but the trouble with hot weather is that, you can only take off so many layers of clothing while maintaining social acceptability. At least when it's cold, you can put more layers on. Now, this is sort of secondary importance because Jahy has now been recognized, and this is rather unfortunate because anyone who would recognize her is either her boss, who would likely be angry, or an underling, in which case this would be embarrassing. So, Druj. Oh dear. So it seems like Druj here was a real peon. To the point where Jahy was like, ooh, let me test this weapon on you. Wow. Man, heavy with nobility. That's a real left-handed compliment. But, Druj here doesn't really seem to care about being used as furniture or otherwise being punished, so I guess, any embarrassment on Jahy's part is not deliberately inflicted, but, man. So I can only imagine the knife will get further twisted, because, Jahy, she works as a waitress, essentially, whereas Druj is, well, we don't know what she does, but she was just leaving the jewelry store and a 2 million yen diamond ring was just sold. So, putting two and two together here, it seems like her servile nature is serving her well in this new world. Oh, it's over for Jahy. This little peon has already found a few shards of the mana crystal, and oh man, Jahy hasn't done anything, so man, it makes you wonder as to why precisely Jahy was second in command, because she really doesn't seem all that competent, you know? It seems like her competence was mainly bolstered by a legion of minions and little peons to do busy work for her. Although that said, we didn't really see her do much of anything aside from lounge around. You know, the only time she was tested, namely by the magical girl who destroyed the mana crystal, she was instantly defeated. It wasn't necessarily like a straight competition, the magical girl just ignored her, but you know, if ever there was a time to prove why you should be second in command, that would have been it. And somehow Jahy's playing this off like, you know, she's totally not enfeebled by the lack of mana crystals. This is just like a disguise to fool and beguile the stupid humans. Oh, look at that. You know, I am correct. Druj has in fact purchased that 2 million yen diamond ring, and it's going to be delivered to an address. No doubt it's like a penthouse apartment or something otherwise insanely fancy. Man, so it seems like Druj has sort of supplanted Jahy in that now she is the high status person, and maybe it's not a reflection of her character because she doesn't seem to know everything's been switched around, but it seems as though she's like a good person for not hanging this over Jahy's head, because like that's the natural thing, right? Like a peon who was abused and treated like garbage, if fortunes were to suddenly turn, you know, naturally they would become an even bigger tyrant than their previous boss had been. So I guess this is the inflection point, right? Like, is Jahy just gonna like admit to being poor? Like, surely that's not the case, but Druj would have to like shell out and pay, right? Or at least she would feel she's obligated to for her illustrious boss. Ooh. So it seems like Druj is doing the legwork here for picking up on Jahy's reasoning. Man, you know, it's almost a little pitiful. I almost kind of wish Druj would just, like, lay into Jahy a little bit. Although I feel like all the punishment Jahy really needs is having to order, like, tap water while her erstwhile minion is eating creme brulee and tea. I mean, I can't say I appreciate creme brulee. I've never really had it, but like it doesn't seem to be something I would like, so I'm not particularly jealous, but you know, knowing it by its reputation. Ooh. Oh man, this is precisely what Jahy deserves. You know, scolding her minion way back when, I would never degrade myself to eat something that you have touched. Well, that means you don't get any creme brulee now, so, wow. It really is over for Jahy. Like, Druji's being escorted in a limousine. Or chauffeured, rather. Like, that's really something. Ooh. That's bad for Jahy. You know, like, she wasn't buying a mana crystal, but that's because humans would never sell anything like that, you know. Oh, it's over, you know. Oh, hey, I'll drop you off at your residence. Like, I mean, surely this will be spun in some way like it's part of the disguise, right? But that's just a pitifully transparent lie if Jahy were to say, like, oh, I'm living in this horrible apartment to spy on the humans. I feel like maybe Druj should start to feel a little bit suspicious that, like, something isn't quite right. Ooh. Okay, so Jahy's sort of like pulling rank here. It's like, it's not for you to know, It's on a need-to-know basis where I live, so we'll meet again one day. Although I get the feeling, if Jahy had her druthers, she would want to never ever run into her minions ever again. Unless, of course, she came into a hefty supply of mana crystals, which, it seems a little doubtful. And the worst part about all of this is that she was trying to find a mana crystal and she basically wasted the whole day. So, man, that's too bad. So I guess, a little tidbit on mana crystals and what they are, I guess it kind of makes sense with what we know that they're effectively condensed magic. Oh, I know where this is going. If Jahy's little pendant is detecting a large chunk of mana crystal and it's seemingly at the top of this nice ritzy looking building, it's no doubt going to be the stockpile that Druj has already found. But oh, for Jahy to climb the exterior of the building, that's gutsy, I'll give her that, but boy howdy, that's a good way to fall off the building and splatter on the pavement. And you know what? It kind of serves her right that she would be spotted while climbing. Oh no, Druj does live here. Man, it really is over for Jahy to just see what sort of opulence her peon lives in. Ah, man, just... wow, that is a rather nice looking apartment. And just like between, the opulence and the air conditioning and like the fact that she just had some ice cream delivered, like, it's over for Jahy. She's going to be crying herself to sleep. There is something to be said about becoming aware of just how bad things really are. Because, like, I can sort of understand being in Jahy's position where you live in a crappy apartment, you eat crappy food, and you just sort of scrape by. But it's not so bad if you don't know how good it could be. You can get used to how crappy it is. And, in some respects, it's not truly as bad as things could be either, but, I feel like the juxtaposition from having this magnificent view in this wonderful apartment, and then going back to her shabby... oh, man. Like, hey, that crappy apartment that looks like a kennel for the hellhounds, but that's where Jahy lives. Like, once she goes back there, it's going to become readily apparent just the vast disparity, and... it's gonna crush her. Man, imagine just like living in this world and not knowing about Roombas and what they are. Like, mistaking it for a familiar or something, like that's bad. That really betrays a lack of knowledge. So this is really bad if Jahy has, not a single appliance to her name. Like, that's, deeply unfortunate. Ooh. So it seems like this is, sour grapes here. Jahy saying, hey, like, I'm disappointed in you for relying on human inventions. That's dishonorable. And, like, that's such a petty thing. Like, you shouldn't use any of this stuff because I can't either. Now, I guess the question is Jahy really gonna try and steal the mana crystals? Like, that's low. I feel like maybe she shouldn't say, like, I'm taking your mana crystals. But, oh, case in point, I guess. Like, not that her assistant would ever talk back to her or anything, but because the security system just entrapped her. Like, you get what you deserve. Oh man, it never ends. I was like, oh, thank you, Jahy-sama, for demonstrating the insufficiencies in my security system. Yeah, totally insufficient. You know, the worst part is that Druj thinks no worse of Jahy. You know, Jahy knows how comparatively poor off she is, but like, she's gonna have to live with knowing she's inferior. That's kind of the icing on the cake, you know, a gift and it's like a nice set of teacups and plates, but, you know, no food, so what use is it? That's how you know it's over. So it seems like she's not giving up on her search for the mana crystals. However, that little sign seems to indicate to me that the general public is not allowed there. You know, it seems like it might be dangerous in this dark, gloomy forest. And let's be real, someone like Jahy is not suited to exploring the wilderness. I feel like if she runs into something so fierce as an irate badger, it would basically be over. You know, I'm not exactly well versed in what sort of wildlife might be roaming around in the forests of Japan, but there are probably a fair few things that could pose considerable danger to a diminutive person like Jahy. And I guess, like, we're assuming the animals are gonna cause any problems. Like, suppose she gets lost. And seeing as how she sort of, like, set her map down and nudged it, I feel like she might, like, knock it into a puddle or something. Or, you know, maybe, like, even with the map, just still getting lost. Like, that's a possibility. You know, the wilderness is still dangerous if you just wander in unaware. Like, what's the rule? Like, humans can live about 3 days without a source of fresh water. Like, you can easily get lost and wander around a forest for a few days, and, you know, if you don't know how to collect water, you know, drinkable water, like, you know, it's very swiftly over. And speaking of over, like, the mana crystal's gone, she spilled all her stuff, like, it is over, you know, barring the intervention of some good Samaritan. And, you know, as bad as things initially seem, it's actually worse, because without that one mana crystal, Jahy can't track down any others, so, you know, I guess you better get used to being a waitress from now on, assuming you make it back to civilization. And I guess this is another element I hadn't considered, like, exposure to the elements. You know, like, rain, it's not good if you're not dressed for it, you know, getting soaked and having to wear wet clothes. Like, assuming it gets, like, cold at night, like, that's a real good way to die of exposure. And I guess looping back to, like, the initial problem, the rain isn't necessarily safe to drink either. Man, Jahy's having a real rough go of things. I feel like she's probably about due for some sort of a win, however minor. Like, I mean, she stumbled down a hill and, like, bashed up her knees. Or twisted her ankle, actually. It looked like she bashed her knee, but, you know, no food, no mana crystal, lost in the woods, in the rain, cold, hungry, thirsty, injured. Like, it's over. She's gonna need some kind of a boon here. Like, we can only torture Jahy so much before she becomes actually sympathetic. Man, you know it's bad when she's sympathizing with the plight of a chick that's fallen out of its nest. Like, when you look at that and you're like, yeah, that's me, like, it really is over. Now, it is interesting that she has the moral fortitude to try and help a chick. And, I think I know where this is going. The mana crystal's probably going to be in the nest, and, the grateful bird will let her take it for free as thanks for saving its young, but I feel like climbing a tree while injured is no good thing to do. So I guess, oh, there we go. Yeah, she's gotten her mana crystal back and a bigger one, but also, also slipped and fell out of the tree. Like, it's probably a fairly long way down. Oh. Okay. Well, it's a reasonably long fall, but she seems to have accidentally made it back to civilization. So, as over as it appeared, little did we realize that Jahy was actually so back. And you know what? It's the landlord of all people who's helping her out of the tree and will likely help her back to the apartment. Like, honestly, the landlord should probably just put her in a rear naked choke again for not paying rent, but, sometimes you do have to treat your fellow man better than they deserve. So I guess the question is, will this unprompted good treatment soften Jahy's heart at all? Like, something tells me when, the first of the month or whenever rolls around and it's time for rent to be due, she's just gonna put up a fuss again. To the point where, you have to get into another little impromptu wrestling match. There we have it. I'll never pay rent, even if you're helping me right now. The landlord should dump her down that embankment. Man, so even when she wins, getting a mana crystal, she still loses all her resources that she poured her paycheck into. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.